We're going to talk about definitely one of my favorite subjects, which is hydrogen. But before we get started, it would be a great idea if you tell everybody who you are, who you're with, and why this topic is so important to you. So please, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Silvio, Konrad. I'm from TÜV Nord. I'm the Managing Director and Chief Commercial Officer of the industrial branch of TÜV Nord. I'm also heading the strategic segment of energy, which includes renewable, conventional, but also nuclear power. And I've recently appointed to be the coordinator for the development of a group-wide hydrogen strategy at TÜV Nord. I'm an engineer by profession. I work in Hamburg, I live in Berlin, and I'm really enjoying to be here today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Please.
Okay, good morning or good day. My name is Ralf Kleinschmidt. I'm from thyssenkrupp Industrial Solutions. Our business area, chemical and process technology. So we are a company, a technology-orientated engineering company, and build design plants for the chemical industry, petrochemical plants, polymer plants, and also electrochemical plants. I think we will talk about later about this. From professional, I'm a chemist, live in the Ruhr area, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and hi everyone. My name is Fabian Ziegler. I'm a Swiss. I live with my family in lovely Hamburg. I absolutely love this place. My job is to run Shell in Germany. I love Shell, I love Germany, so a perfect job. My passion is decarbonization. I decarbonize first my own life, and I think now the big job is to decarbonize Shell. A big fan of the GREENTECH Festival, a big fan of Nico and his work, so very pleased to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. The reason why hydrogen is one of my favorite topics, and the reason why I like talking about it so much, is because I worry that the march towards using electricity all of the time for electric vehicles and other forms of mobility, we have an issue in that globally. Around 20–25% of electricity is created sustainably, and yet we've had for many years lots of trials in terms of hydrogen vehicles. Japanese companies have been producing cars that use hydrogen for a while. There's been long-term studies in California and elsewhere, and here in Europe in various countries. And it seems to me that hydrogen is not just a good answer for energy from point of view that we don't have to rely on electricity, but just from a cultural standpoint, you don't have to plug your car in for a long time. You can go fill up and move on exactly as you do right now. So I love thinking about hydrogen in terms of an answer for mobility. Now, why is it important in terms of decarbonization? I mean, how does it play into that entire story? I mean, maybe you can start us off, Fabian.
Yeah, with the greatest pleasure. So, I mean, my company, Shell, most people think it's an oil company, or they might think it's an oil and gas company. In fact, we're not, or in fact, we have to change. Our current business model is a lot dependent on fossil fuels. And in this particular country here in Germany, we contribute a huge amount to the country's CO2 emissions. And we are completely determined to do away with this. We have a plan to transform this business, to decarbonize this business. And in fact, we believe that by 2030, we can contribute around about 10% of the country's emission reduction plans. In this quest, of course, hydrogen plays a huge role. It plays a big role, but not the only one. Mm-hmm. We see hydrogen a lot in conjunction with green power. And we are very active in this business already. It's a nascent business. We are partner in a joint venture that operates Germany's hydrogen site network. It's 85 sites in the country. And with this, Germany has the biggest hydrogen station network. But we have only 400 cars that fuel up with hydrogen. So if I tank with my company car, the chances that I come across someone else there is very, very low, but it paints the picture of a few of the challenges. We work a lot with other companies to generate more demand. And you need these things we call electrolyzers. And electrolyzers are machines that need a lot of green power, and then you can break up water and you can make green hydrogen from it. And as we speak, we are building one in our refinery in Cologne. It'll take another 3 months for it to go live. And I'm just painting the picture of a nascent business we're trying to make much bigger. And eventually, green power and hydrogen should be a third of our business portfolio, and hence a key cornerstone of our decarbonization.
Excellent. Please, from your point of view.
Yeah, that's perfect, because we at thyssenkrupp are technology provider for water electrolysis. So we have our own water electrolysis technology, and already today able to install the full supply chain for 1 gigawatt of water electrolysis per year. So really a big scale. And based on this hydrogen, as we are an engineering company, of course, we have downstream products for fuels, for fertilizers, which you can make out of the green hydrogen, and then can go into other industries. And the second thing, just as we are also, of course, a steel company, we are thinking about CO2 reduction in steel making. And we want to use hydrogen for reduction of iron ore, and then to make our steel a little bit greener than it is today. Because if you use hydrogen, then out of a blast furnace at the end, there's no CO2 emissions, but steam or water.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, please add yours.
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad to see that hydrogen is now making the step from talking to making. With all the new regulations and programs, both nationally in Germany, but also in the European Union, I believe hydrogen has really the power to take off and change the energy mix, really build the bridge from generation over storage, transportation to usage, be it a source of energy or a mean of production. I think this will really help to dramatically change the energy environment, so to say. We as TÜV Nord are familiar with hydrogen for many, many years in all aspects. TÜV Nord is a company being engaged in testing, inspection, and certification of production means, of equipment, of processes to really make the world secure and safe. And we today really see a lot of projects in energy and industry and mobility, which goes in transformation from existing natural gas pipelines into the use for hydrogen, or when it comes to storage cavern, to make them ready to also store hydrogen in future. What we believe is that we, as TÜV, with many, many years of experience, can really help to make this revolution safe and secure, as we did it for previous other sources of energy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting points you're all bringing up. I'm going to pick on a couple of them for us to discuss further. I mean, the first one that struck me is 400 cars is not very much. And I've seen maybe 1,000 cars in my time as I've been dotting around the world looking at various hydrogen mobility solutions. How are we going to actually accelerate the use of hydrogen as a viable green ecologically friendly power source? What are the challenges ahead of us in terms of doing that? How are we going to make it happen and accelerate that in the same way that we've seen with the electric vehicle marketplace? Fabian?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that this country, Germany, and also the European Union, they thought very hard about a hydrogen strategy. And we welcome these strategies a lot, and in a way it means there's quite systemic thinking about this new hydrogen economy. And in a market, you always need to start with demand. The question whether in passenger cars hydrogen will be ever the biggest solution, I think is questionable. It could be more electric charging. Some of you might have heard yesterday a prominent German manufacturer launched a really nice truck. So I think on the truck side, there's a lot of demand coming into the market. And then big companies like Thyssen, other big consumers of energy. So there's a lot of demand that you can pool. And what is important in this game is systemic collaboration, because demand needs to work together with syndicates that bring green power, the electrolyzers. You really need to think system. And in a world where you really scale it up, hydrogen will displace huge quantities of oil, huge quantities of natural gas. You need to think really big. You will need to think about pipeline systems. You will need to think about big ships bringing in hydrogen from afar. So one message is also think big and think very systemic and super collaborative.
Hopefully those ships will be powered by hydrogen, otherwise it would be counterproductive. Please,
yeah,
give me your
totally agree on this. So what we need is really more intensive collaboration between different industrial sectors, so that steel, cement industry, petrochemical industry, and then energy suppliers need to come together, because this is a system approach and not what one industry can handle alone. So totally agree on this. I think on technology level, the technologies are available today. Of course, they need to be improved to go down with the costs, operating costs, and investment costs. That's for sure. But there is a status where we can start with, and which could be implemented, and which will be implemented soon. And on the, I think. A very important thing, of course, green products, green hydrogen are today more expensive than fossil-based fuels, and there we need some regulatory things in Germany, but also in Europe and throughout the world to change it, like taxes, other incentives. This is really needed to get it to start this, to really start with the scale and get it to the feasibility thereafter. But for the start, then we need some regulatory things.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I completely agree, and would like to point out again the aspect of security and trust while we are introducing and implementing and using a new technology, and especially when the market is launching and turning up, the acceptance both from regulators, decision makers, from the public, and other market players is really depending on the safety and security of the application of this technology along the whole value chain, from generation, as I said, over storage, transportation to usage. If you see a pressurized vessel or pipeline fueled with hydrogen, it has a pressure going up to 60 bars. And if this leakage comes together with oxygen, it builds a very explosive mixture. So security, safety, a very robust quality and safety infrastructure is really essential. And as you said, I see a lot of things to be done by the regulators. We from TÜV Nord provide assistance in order to develop these technical standards and norms and regulatory provisions. And we also see currently a kind of underestimation and lack of understanding that this really needs to be brought forward in terms of further developed standards, in terms of further developed norms for not just the planning and the construction of equipment, but also for the continuous monitoring and operation. That's the aspect I would like to highlight.
I mean, that brings up an interesting point. I mean, how do we effectively sell hydrogen to those people that are making regulations, that do have safety concerns, that can see that it has a future, but they are holding back, or they're holding everybody else back? And how do we do that in a way that transcends countries? Because yes, we have the EU, but I think we all know that despite the EU, everyone has their own rules, regulations, things that they do. We see that in the tech industry all the time with just the the differences in, say, funding for technology companies, for support for technology companies. It's different here in Germany to elsewhere. There's a lot more regulation here than you see in other countries. How are we going to sell hydrogen to these people and make sure that they're actually pushing it forward on the agenda so that we can make use of it as a viable ecological energy source?
This is a pretty complex question. I mean, one piece is what my colleague of thyssenkrupp talked about. One critical piece is the economics of the whole equation. And a brutal current reality is that a black molecule costs 1 unit and the nice blue molecule costs 5 units. Huh? I mean, that's the current reality. So we need a bit of a game plan for this to change, for this to come into balance. And of course, you need to factor in the true CO2 cost into the black equation. And you need to kind of have a bit of a fantasy in terms of where the blue economics can go. So you can see that, that this will kind of balance off at scale. I think this whole aspect of international collaboration, I would be incredibly optimistic. I have seen the policymakers in this country to make contact with policymakers at EU level, policymakers in Holland, which I think is a very natural collaboration. I'm not an expert when it comes to more global collaboration, but I think collaboration between countries will be key, and I think it's happening already.
Good.
So that's right. So we have our German hydrogen strategy in place, European hydrogen with the targets for scale for green hydrogen. So 5 gigawatts in Germany, 40 gigawatts in Europe. And this, of course, is not enough. So definitely the hydrogen demand will be much higher in future, and we need to import a lot of hydrogen from all over the world, where renewable energies are cheap, photovoltaic or wind. And then, of course, we need the right infrastructure to bring all this hydrogens into Europe and into Germany, which is also an important fact, and which needs also be handled, because if we start with technology and installing technology or capacity for green hydrogen, then that is the one thing, but bring it to another place is the other thing, and by pipelines, by ship, whatever. So, and that is not all where, in all places where energy is cheap, is the right infrastructure is existing today.
And final word on this, please, Silvio.
Yeah, I also agree, because hydrogen opens up a huge field of collaboration. I really like to see that the German government is funding these activities, these, as we call it in German, Reallabore, where you can really work together, the industry and service providers, equipment manufacturers, in a kind of laboratory to make your experience at small scale and then scale it up. We just recently acquired a nice project in a small community close to Bonn, where we are supporting from planning, construction, through operations, the build-up of a hydrogen infrastructure, including an electrolyzer, the hydrogen grid, but also doing some new things on sector coupling, using hydrogen for heating, using hydrogen for powering of buses and trains. And this really helps to collaborate in a way to bring this forward, not just turn the market up, but then scale it towards 2030 to really meet the demanding and challenging climate protection targets.
Excellent, thank you. Listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I could probably carry on for hours, but unfortunately, we need to let other people come on stage and have their time too. Thank you so much to GreenTech Festival for getting me back on stage for the first time since the lockdown. This used to be my life, so I'm really glad to be back in a real offline event. So thank you, everybody. I'm Stewart Rogers at Badass Times, but more importantly, please put your hands together for Silvio, Fabian, for Ralph, and for the wonderful conversation we've just had about hydrogen. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.